to Connectedness, everyone. This is a very special episode. As you may know, Connectedness is a podcast about being human together, and we talk about relationships, dating, personal growth, and generally connecting with each other. I'm the host, Fernanda, founder of Filled Cups, and today I have two very special guests with me, my friends Tony and Jenny. And I had asked them to come on this podcast. Number one, I've always wanted to have them on this podcast to talk about their relationship and how they met. But actually, last week, I was even more motivated because I had been in a singles discussion. And based off of that discussion, I decided I want to do a series on what went right for the people who found success online dating. So Tony and Jenny are my first guests on this series about what went right. And I will hand it over to you guys, and I will ask you, Tony and Jenny, can you please both introduce yourselves? How do we know each other, and or when did you meet? How long? So it's like three questions: introduction, how we know each other, and when did you meet?
You first.
I was the gateway for this friendship group that we have. Before I met Tony, I believe. Yes, because I remember you and your partner getting together before I was serious about him. So that, my goodness, was 2013 when we met. I think you and I might have met in 2010 because I was newly single and because I speak Spanish and French, I was out doing a meetup and met you at the French language meetup. And then we had like all of these like evolving things that we enjoyed doing. So I promptly left the meetup and got invited to the fun group parties. And that was a really special blossoming time of my life. So Tony and I met in 2013 and been serious ever since. And what do
Right.
you want to say about that?
Hey, I'm Tony, originally from California, have lived in Illinois for ever since, for more than half my life, unfortunately. But it would not have brought me to her. So I was dating on and off using apps and having little success, having nice dates, but ultimately not really connecting. And found her through a dating app, and there's no reason why our paths could possibly have crossed. So I am forever thankful for that. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about dating apps in a minute, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah.
But so when I first met her, we stayed connected via phone, a lot of chat, etc. And then we finally met about a month after we had began first dating. And I guess your Halloween party was my coming out party to you and your friend group
That's right.
because we went as French Kiss. It was a meme at the time where you dressed in
Like a mime.
Kiss makeup, yeah, Kiss makeup,
Kiss.
yeah, the band Kiss,
Oh,
and then we carried around French loaves and had the appropriate hats and such that made us look like French Kiss. Haha. But it was a fantastic party, and I knew your people were really cool. Like the meeting all of your friends and such. Even though you didn't know what my face looked like, it seemed like it really well.
We
Tony,
had to cut to a still of that.
yes, but the hilarious thing is how memory gets distorted over time. Like our perception is really what you remember. Because in my perception, you were a mime. You were
Indeed, I was.
one of those French mimes with the shirt with the stripes and the little beret. That's what I remember.
I think he bought a kit
Yeah, right.
because that
All
wasn't a
right.
real bandana. That was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Halloween City. It was a great time, and yeah, that was pretty early in our relationship, as a matter of fact.
That's right. And it was also, so it was a magical time, I think, for all of us. And we were having these house parties, and Tony, you came and joined. When you joined the party, how early in your dating was that? Was that like,
Within about a month and a half.
okay, so very fresh. So Jenny,
Yes.
you're so courageous. You're like, I'm bringing Tony to the party. And you know what? We all loved Tony, so it couldn't have gone any better. But I have seen other situations where people bring a new dating person to a party and things don't go so well.
But that's it. It's proof of concept, Fernanda.
Really is.
And I show this person to people who,
Like, how does he do socially? It was like a test. And you passed, Tony, you passed. Just so you
Feels like it.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
13 years later, some. Yeah.
we had to date ourselves, literally. It was 2013 in the fall. So our anniversary is September 14th. And it was a Halloween party. So there you go.
So there you go. So that's easy to remember. That's nice. So okay, so Tony brushed upon the dating app thing for a bit, and we definitely are
Mhm.
going to talk about it. But I just want to set the context a little bit more because both of you were divorced, right?
Mhm.
And it's different like time frames, I think. And then Jenny, you had kids from your previous marriage. You were co-parenting. And Tony, you had an ex-wife that you have a really great relationship with. And you both had been dating in the apps, but it sounds like, and I don't know if I heard this right, correct me if I'm wrong. Tony, you had been in the apps maybe longer than Jenny? Or,
Yeah, likely on and off. On and
okay,
off. It felt like after every time I had dated a little semi-significantly, then I would just kind of cool off and
okay.
take out, separate myself from the app and then re-engage a little bit later, just to kind
Mhm.
of let it go. But yeah, I think I'd been doing it for longer.
You had taken some breaks, and that's what you just said is very common. I hear it everywhere. And myself also, when I was on the dating apps, I would take breaks, and then a lot
Mhm.
of my friends take breaks, the ones who are still are in the dating app, because I think the general consensus is people get tired of the like the dynamics of being on the apps, and then or the this is gonna sound terrible, but like the inventory of people, it starts to be repetitive or recycled, and then it's like, okay, take a break, come back a few months later, kind of thing, or maybe try a different app. Or were you always on the same app, Tony?
I don't know. I was on Natch.com initially, and then then it was over to OkCupid,
Okay.
and she was Jenny was the first person I dated really significantly. Like I'd been on some dates, but
Yeah.
no one more than a couple dates
Okay.
besides Jenny.
And we had
Okay.
some relationships, but that was IRL.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And Jenny, what did you have a similar experience to Tony? Were you like trying a couple of different dating apps, or what were you doing there?
We could have met in Match. I used Match.com, OkCupid. I really don't remember if I tried anything else.
Okay.
And we've got a lot in common interests, and
Yeah.
so my perspective was I tried Match, and I honestly thought it was super superficial. It was like, you're gonna love Bob because tennis, right? And at the time, OkCupid was a great fit for both of us because I think we are wordier people, and um, so much of this experience, I will say, for all the highs and lows, is about self-discovery. So the OkCupid thing that drew me in, and I don't know that I think apps have gone into more of that inventory meat market type thing with the swiping. I literally never quite learned what left or right was because I never used that, right? But OkCupid allowed for all of these questions, some mandatory, some not. And I enjoyed looking at that, and I enjoyed looking at other people. So it was a much more interesting experience.
Think.
Okay. I was dating semi covertly
Mhm.
in under a year because I had 8 and 11-year olds. And I want to say too that something that definitely influenced how the relationship evolved in relationship to my kid, a child of divorce, and I was actually the same age as my daughter when my parents divorced. So she's the younger of the two, and we ended up with an unusual configuration when I was growing up of sharing time 50-50. And I knew what it was like to see. Certainly, my dad dated, and then ultimately remarried. So the whole thing was about the way I grew up switching houses and what it was like to integrate into different families. And as we got serious, that was something I was pretty guardian about.
Yeah.
So,
No, it makes total sense. And actually, I can totally relate too, because when I dated Frank, I waited a while before I introduced him to my kids. And even then, I didn't have him around my kids as much as I tried to protect my kids because I didn't want them to get attached if something were to go awry. So I totally get it. It's complicated dating when you have kids, and especially if the kids are elementary or younger, or if it's one thing when people are dating and their kids are in college, but when you're dating and your kids are 8 or 9, it's a delicate time, right? And I get it.
Yeah.
I
I
get
would say you asked earlier what worked about this, and I do think that was one of the things, like as kind of let the flower of the relationship bloom a little bit before
it.
kind of adding the extra pressure of. And so while it was okay to throw me to the friends earlier,
Hmm.
not so much the kids, because that actually has impact on the kids themselves should it not go right. So I appreciated that. I thought that was
Absolutely.
righteous.
And I'm
I
sorry.
remember, Fernanda, that I got a new job, and that year I was actually transitioning and working contracts and the like when we met. And I was with my mom and my two kids, taking his camera along, borrowed by my friend. And early on in our dating, um, we he was listed as my great friend Gabia, so we joked about that a lot. And so Gabia was constantly calling. Gabia lent me the camera. We hadn't even come out as a couple by like February, March. So it was going on towards the late, yeah, a good 10 months later where they were, well, had seen him multiple times.
Oh, you guys are so sweet. Okay, actually, but I wanted to touch upon one thing
Yes,
real
back up.
quick, but then I wanted to go back to the process of meeting on the apps because I think that's where a lot of people are having trouble nowadays. But on what Tony was talking about, how it allowed the relationship to flourish over longer time because of that constraint of not wanting to introduce to the kids so quickly or so soon. And one thing I've heard from single people who are dating when one part of the relationship does not have kids and the other part does, the part that doesn't have kids, I've heard from some of my girlfriends or women I've talked to that they don't like that because then they don't have the access or the attention of their partner who is a parent as much as they want. Having been the parent, my record to them was, you know what? Just use that time to focus on your own life, and it's great because at least the way I see it is you can have your alone time. You don't have to worry about it. And then when you're together, you're having a nice time. But so I guess that what I'm probably trying to say is not, it depends on how you look at it, right? Like, is it an opportunity to maintain your individuality? Or is it a deficit? Like you're not getting the attention you want because your partner is with the kids.
I'll speak to that because I would be the partner without the kids, and that is, I knew I had her every 2 weeks for 2 weeks. They shared custody between, like they would go from 2 weeks with her and 2 weeks without, and so we'd use phone and chats liberally, maybe even Skype liberally in between that time. And then I knew I'd get her in 2 weeks, or we'd have chances to see each other again
Yeah.
more appropriately. So it was not. If anything, it was a nice merge lane because I was used to being on my own 100% of the time. So then it was just a matter of being able to slowly move into the relationship.
Yeah, I love how looking at it like that. It's like a merge lane. That's awesome.
Hmm.
So,
Actually, he
so,
said that quite a lot. Merge lane is one of his expressions. Getting into the
ooh,
merge lane.
I love it.
I'd like to say too, I love your philosophy. I'm glad you're giving that advice to people because it's super exciting to be in a blossoming relationship. And I've had friends without kids who have occasionally said, like, I feel very deprioritized in the lives of my friends with children. And that's a challenge, and I have empathy for it. But those who are raising children know how comprehensive and fearful identity family is.
Yeah.
I guess I would say to someone who's dating someone with children that if you are taking relationships seriously, you will be joining a family, and that will ask different things of you, and you are not two adults in a relationship. You are borrowing the alone time of an individual with whom, if you're serious, you are going to be in a group environment and need to make a lot of mature decisions you didn't consent to in conceiving a child. So it's food for thought, and I can understand why some people, again, know yourself. So if it is not what you feel you can lean into with love, then maybe you should make decisions to not date people who have children. There are a lot of wonderful people who, we both had marriages where we were in love with our partners until that changed. And many very fantastic individuals are going to be divorced and want to know someone who's a better fit. So,
Yeah.
ability to experience a relationship with someone if you know yourself better. You
Right,
could
right.
do
No,
some
I
work.
completely agree. And I think that's what uh I've talked to a lot of daters, and some daters will tell me, I don't want to date anybody with kids because I don't like being deprioritized when I'm with that person and that person has the kids. Like, okay, fair enough. It is what it is. Um, and yeah, so, but it is a complex topic, and it's something that's important to think about when if you are getting serious about a person. What you said, Jenny, is, even though you are in a duo in the beginning, after a certain time, you might be a part of the family. And so that dynamic will change. So do you want that? If not, it's probably easier to just get out of it earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Better to know early and be honest about it up front if you know that's not what you want.
And I
Exactly.
gotta say, I think I've not dated someone seriously who had kids, and I like this configuration.
Yeah.
Tony's been such a wonderful partner and such a backbone. And he works from home, and as the kind of things like that, he was such a steady figure and so mindful of what we all needed. It was amazing, and I did grow up where my stepmom, had kids, and growing up in the extra complexity of kids with kids is something I'm not experienced with other than living it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Yeah.
those can be difficult.
Yeah, yeah, I haven't experienced that either. So I know I'm in the same boat as you, Jenny. But so okay, so guys, for the daters out there, because you guys had you have your happy ending. It's
We're
uh,
married now.
if you can remember, go back to the time when you were both on OkCupid, who who reached out to whom, and how was the reaching out? How did that go? Like, was it like, and you don't have to remember every exact word or anything, but was it like a brief message, or like whoever reached out, what did they do right that made the other person decide to continue the conversation?
This might be a bit of back and forth, but
Okay.
here's where it was at. When I was doing my on again, off again with the app, so I might have dated somebody, kind of broke, and then come back.
Yeah.
Every time I'd re-engage with it, she was at the top of the list at like 98% of a match.
Ooh.
And every time I'd go, why haven't I reached out? I remember this. And then I'd reread her profile, And I get to the part where the age range, I was out of her age range. And so and I don't, I didn't know the term or the importance of boundaries at the time. But given kind of the shame I had about online dating, I'm last year boomer, and online dating had its own shame attached to it. I wouldn't tell any of my friends and family that I was online dating for fear they'd find my profile and make fun of me. It was
Oh
weird.
my gosh.
Yeah, I just had all this, like, I had my own issues with it.
Yeah.
And which I now, I'm so proud. Like, I would never have met her. And I'd always read it and I'd see that age range, and I was out of that age range. And I'm thinking, one thing I committed to, because I would just never, I had heard other stories, I would never approach somebody who said something specifically that I did not fill. Like, I wouldn't violate that boundary, right? I wouldn't violate it. And I was committed to that
Okay.
throughout. And so I'd see her and I go, oh man, what a shame. But then move on. And then
I
Wait,
wrote
Tony,
him
Tony,
first.
Tony, were you too young for her age range? Is that
no,
what?
no,
Oh
no,
yeah,
no, 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 no. I was outside of her age range.
I know, I'm just kidding. I just
But thank you for giving me that moment.
this was all blonde.
Yeah.
My first husband was 10 years older than me, and he wasn't quite that far, but
Very close.
he was outside what I put there, because I thought that might be one thing I could test a different variable on. So I eventually got around to clicking on his profile. I can't remember all of the beats. Okay. Um, so I found Tony's profile, and it was sweet. I don't know that we have the record of it. Recently, we had reason to bring up my profiles that I could find, for some friends, but I just remember, like, warm fuzzies. Nothing that put me off at all. And I decided to reach out to him, and it was at a time, honestly, where there was stress in with, like, my ex in relationship and just, like, logistics in life. So I was pretty brief. I remember just that he was so responsive and felt conversational. And I'm jumping ahead a sec, but we came in and out because I said, I gotta bounce for a sec, to get off the app. Again, that period where I thought, I am distracting myself seeking something when I had a lot, like, right in my, and and saying I was going to be off for a while, I gave him my email.
That's smart.
And then, and his smart move was to immediately answer me by email. So,
My very first one was, I'm not in your age range. Like,
Oh,
because I was like, wait a minute, I think I recognize her. I was like, why am I not already connected with her?
yeah.
And I read that again. I'm like, this is why I've, like, been avoiding you for all these years, or however long it was. Yeah. So I made sure, like, wait, really? Are you sure? And then I got the email. And so then off we were to the races.
But what I want to say, that I think I'll give him his last year boomer status, is that he was somebody who would talk on the telephone with me. And as before we met, like you said, however many weeks it was before we actually went on a date, I remember going to Trader Joe's, ostensibly like Trader Joe's, and parking in the parking lot not far from my house when my mom was visiting and my kids were there. And having this fantastic conversation with Tony. And that this will be a point of advice, folks. Like, get to an in-person meeting, and or, like, drop all of what we've gotten used to about not actually hearing people's voices and get on a telephone.
Yes. The voice.
Oh.
The voice matters. And Tony, Tony's like a Toastmaster ninja, and he's very, like, articulate and stuff. So I'm sure he won you over with his prose and talking and stuff. What do you think, Tony and Jenny?
I want you to go the way you laughed at that.
I was thinking the first time. Also, the way I think you do get more chemistry too, though, when you see someone, and I remember even just like as a teenager talking on the phone with someone and then meeting them later and kind of being like, and for the great conversation we had, I felt like all the warm fuzzies continuing and everything. And I thought he was, at a level I was curious about him. I wanted to learn about him. But we contrived to talk by Zoom. Was it? No, that didn't exist. Skype back in the day. And I got into the inner closet of my bedroom late at night when my kids were there. And I got to say, for his suave Toastmaster stuff, what won me over was him pretending to be like a guy walking in zero gravity. He was like, there was like an animated, goofy ass thing. Can I say ass on this podcast?
Yeah. So he made you laugh. He did something funny. Oh, that's awesome.
He was goofy, and I think uniquely goofy was one of the expressions in your profile. I remember.
Yeah, my hall director called me that way back in college when I was a resident advisor. So yes.
Did you do the thing where you walk down the stairs behind the couch? You know that.
That was later years.
Yeah, but I'm silly. He's silly. We have a lot of laughs, and this is I love you, Tom.
Oh,
and I love you.
It's like honestly, like I don't have a lot of friends who have met online successfully. Only a few, I would say maybe just a handful of couples. And you guys are one of them. You're always one of the ones that I talk about. Like, oh, my friends, Jenny and Tony, they met online. And I always look at that as like, okay, they must have. I'm curious, like, and I'm gonna be asking other people too, like, what do you think went right for you? So, like, what with all the negativity that I hear from daters about online dating and how problematic it is, what would you say is things that maybe you did differently that worked for you when you were evaluating each other?
That's a good question. What did I do differently? You know what? I think I wouldn't consider myself a serial dater, but I went on enough dates type of thing. And I think I became more and more clear on what was working for me versus not, but then also what the people I was dating wanted and being responsive to that and being aware. And on some dates, I heard horror stories about other men they had dated. And so I did everything I could to avoid such things. But I think there is just kind of an honest assessment with people that you date and especially relationships that you get clear on what is important to you. And so from an evaluation standpoint, she was checking all the boxes, certainly. She really had so much and then more for us as a relationship. So, yeah.
Thinking about people who are dating, I definitely had times where it's a fantasy realm when you're online dating in particular, because I think it's so succinct and you're reading a lot into it. I've heard people talk about like keep your dating profile pretty basic so that you're not screening out people. I certainly was hyper specific, and not to say how to exclude people, but I shared a lot of my personality, and I'm gonna guess maybe that cut out some folks who would be either intimidated or irritated by that. So I think it's a hard dance to say how specific to be versus, I guess I'd say if someone's really specific, maybe you should still go on a date with them if you like 90% of what you see there on the specificity. And I would say not to put too many things that exclude people. But for me, meeting Tony, because I'm politically on the left side of the spectrum and he is too, some of our values were aligned in ways that made it really nice. And I think if you know things about yourself that are kind of pillars of how you want to be, it's important to show up that way. And so I just kept finding the green light situation, which was lovely. And I don't know, what were you thinking?
you said something important in the last answer, which was you were as authentic and detailed as you could be about your profile. And in a way that probably filtered out some people that maybe you weren't their cup of tea, and that's okay, right? And it's not necessarily about being picky, it's more about bringing your like detailed about you and what you want or how you are, your personality and your values. And you did mention being politically liberal and how Tony was that also, and so that helped you guys kind of do a values check. Curious, did you put that you were politically liberal on your profile? Okay.
An atheist.
Yeah. Okay.
I was very straightforward about things that mattered to me. And I'll say too that my first relationship was from someone who was from the Caribbean and found diversity and different experiences as really exciting in a relationship. There were some things that with Tony were so gratifying because we didn't have to have all of the same childhood references, you know what I'm saying? But to know that we were grounded in some reference points that were values oriented was great. So I think those things developing, we were talking about like what you evaluate someone on. It was seeing those areas that I could lean into with compatibility. And I think it was just a much more honest person, even honest about some of the things I was struggling with. And it was his warmth. And this man, for as much as you can go on tiny rants about things that irritate you in the outside environment, he's got a great well of compassion, and it was very healing to grow our relationship and to feel very accepted. So the security, oddly, it is, and our friendship are as important as our attraction. And I do remember one thing someone I was reading about when I was single, advice to someone else recently. Like it's so significant to really enjoy your partner. Getting some advice when I was single, and it was a woman talking about some things that were different between her and her partner that might be ruled out. I think there was she towered over him, whatever that was. But she said, I picked the person I want to just spend all night staying up talking to. And that it's so amazing to have someone you really like as much as you're attracted to. So I would say do not settle for less than that. It's what helps you with your endurance in a relationship, feeling safe and laughing and just enjoying the other person being someone you can really share your ideas with just freely, uninhibited.
Yeah, uninhibited. So I just have one last question for you guys. Like, would you consider back then when you were starting to date each other, were you both in a state of mind where you considered yourselves to be securely attached? Or was one of you secure and the other one anxious or whatever configuration?
With each other, you mean? Ooh. I don't think I've ever not felt securely attached. I don't feel, she does not give anxiety to be in a relationship with her. So I don't know that I've ever felt that. And I have felt it in other relationships. So yeah, I would say that has never been a real issue for me.
Yeah, I think very much securely attached. And I am someone who has had anxiety. And I think it was that I really hate when people cold shoulder their partners and step away and just kind of like let dissatisfaction be felt. That's horrid for me. And so even if we were struggling with one another and not in agreement, it would be like, this is how I'm feeling and this is what I need right now. So I was always careful not to leave him in the dark. And I think that's the kind of thing that could be like, even when you're not at your best, you can try to acknowledge that it's something you're dealing with, like own your shit, please. Yeah.
Own your shit. I love
With
it.
therapy, etc.
I love it. So, okay, so that was kind of my last question for you guys, but any last piece, last closing thought for people who are out there who really want to find their person?
Be clear. Be clear on who you are and what you want. And not to force it on the other person, but if anything, not have to force it on another person as you figure it out. I feel like the relationships I had made it more clear to me what I needed in a relationship, and then you negotiate the small stuff, but that big stuff is the stuff that is going to make the biggest difference. So for me, it was like I became clearer over time, even with failed dating relationships or just failed relationships, what was important to me. And then it made it easier, right? Once I found the person that I found her. So that's my advice. Be clear who you are and what you want.
Be clear on who you are and what you want. That's really good advice. Yeah. Jenny, anything to add? Or
I would say when I think of people who are part of that self-reflection is to understand if you're drawn into patterns that might mean you tell yourself only this type of feeling is what relationship is. I'm not necessarily speaking from my own experience here, but I see people who, only consider conflict what passionate love is, because that's a demonstration of care, being jealous. I think it's quite important to do some inner work so that you might be open to second impressions or a larger variety of folks that you might otherwise have ruled out, because again, you just want, I assume, to get to a sense of like growth and stability and happiness. And you'd be surprised as you lean into relationship what things can work. So I'd say broadening horizons has to do with probably questioning the patterns that you've had in previous relationships. And that was certainly something that aided me being ready for something that, like I said, felt more in some ways familiar because we shared a culture, but also like the depth was unusual, and the steadiness that I felt secure in was amazing. So, to think that if you're being superficial, is that who you really are? and what could be exciting for you? And also know that a lot of this feels like a horrid job search, and there's as much rejection. And it's really nice to perhaps consider that someone might not show up in that very first date as the person they really are, and that's not to loop into things that are red flags, and but just to say, should I try date two? Does something change here? And then you can just politely step away. And I also think I was pretty direct when I chose not to keep seeing someone, and I saw that hurt some people's feelings, but also ultimately I had someone say to me, and it didn't hurt mine, because I don't want to be associated with someone who doesn't want to be with me. Do you know what I mean? So it was a peaceable parting, and that those are some thoughts I
yeah,
suggest people reflect on.
it's great. Thank you so much, you guys. I think we got a lot of good stuff covered here. We talked about a lot of dynamics of online dating, things that could have filtered. Like if you hadn't written to Tony, he wasn't gonna write to you because he wasn't in your criteria for age. So that's a big one, right?
That'd be a lesson.
Yeah, that's a big one. And then everything else we talked about with being your authentic self and being okay with that ruling some people out, and that's fine. And what both of you just said, being clear, owning your shit, and I think we're gonna have to trademark that and then the last piece you said, Jenny, about like maybe people might not show up as their full selves on the first day, and then you have to decide whether you want to have a second date or not. Maybe it takes a while to get to know somebody because everyone's going through all this like rejection patterns and things like that. So all good stuff. So
And one last thought, which is I have had a hard struggle to be mindful. I'm often anticipating or thinking, 360 and not with the person with me. In those kind of heightened experiences of dating, I would say like take a deep breath and just try to be present and have the experience that's in front of you.
yeah, being mindful. It seems like it all comes back to mindfulness, right? Like all it's crazy.
So much does, right? Everything.
Oh, I hate it.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us through this dating conversation. We are here to help bring out the message of connectedness to the world. I hope if you're interested in this topic, feel free to send me a note through the socials or in YouTube or Spotify. And if you have thoughts or if you'd like to be on the podcast to talk about these topics, I would love to have you. And stay safe, stay warm, everybody.
Thanks, Banana.
Thank you, Fernando. We love you.
You.